To understand our world, we must look through the lens of why.
Welcome back to The Explainer. Listen, if you're stepping into the 2026 job market right now, you probably have this creeping, intense feeling that the rules of the game are completely rigged, right? Like the entry-level door hasn't just been closed, it's literally been permanently locked. Well, today we're taking a razor-sharp look at the data to validate exactly why you feel that way. We're going to unmask what experience has actually become in today's economy, a total luxury asset. Okay, let's just dive right in and confront the massive elephant in the room. You've heard the mainstream corporate narrative blasting everywhere. Generative AI and automation are totally to blame for this lack of entry-level opportunities. The story goes that algorithms are just swallowing up the work junior employees used to do. But is that actually the truth, or is it just a really convenient smokescreen? Before we can answer that, we've got to anchor this whole crisis in stark reality. Graduates today are standing in front of a locked job market while chained to a massive $1.8 trillion student debt anchor. And that's just in the United States. Getting a degree was, sold to us as a guaranteed ticket to a better life. But instead, millions are drowning in high-interest debt before they even land that first real job. The stakes for this locked door, they've literally never been higher. Which brings us to Section 1, AI, the convenient scapegoat. Or, as I like to call it, corporate gaslighting in the job market. So let's actually look at the data on AI's impact here. Hard numbers from a recent World Economic Forum and PwC report reveal a really glaring anomaly. Researchers took all entry-level jobs and split them into 4 groups based on their AI exposure. For 3 of those groups, from the lowest exposure to fairly exposed, entry-level postings just kept growing over the last decade. Totally normal economy stuff. But check out that bottom row. In the highest 25%, the roles most exposed to AI, things like finance, tech, professional services, entry-level vacancies didn't crash, they just flatlined. They just stayed completely stuck. And this is where we get a brilliant chronological twist. Look at the timeline. This hiring stagnation in those highly AI-exposed sectors, it started in 2012. That is a full decade before ChatGPT even hit the market in late 2022. This completely shatters that simple, convenient story that generative AI single-handedly triggered the slowdown. AI didn't slam the doors shut on graduate hiring. It just stopped opening new ones. The real truth is hiding right here in this quote from a senior people leader interviewed in the WEF report. Privately, employers admit that AI just makes a really tidy excuse. I mean, think about it. It is so much easier for a company to put out a PR statement saying, hey, we're pausing junior hiring because of AI, rather than admitting the reality that they're quietly slashing budgets and panicking over a shaky economy and slow growth. Let's move to Section 2, the perfect economic storm and unmasking the real culprits. Because if AI is mostly a scapegoat for the stagnation, what's actually causing it? Well, it's a toxic economic cocktail. First up, we've got deep economic uncertainty driven by a worsening federal debt path, something the Brookings Institution has been raising alarms about. Add to that massive shifts in human capital, severe housing unaffordability, and strict corporate tightening. Basically, basic cost-cutting is just being dressed up as technological innovation. Companies aren't replacing grads with AI. They're just hesitating to hire anybody while they scrabble to figure out their budgets. And let's look at how this builds into a geographic crisis, too. Post-recession research from the SAR Council Journal of Applied Sciences highlights a massive brain drain from rural areas. Basically, the most educated, skilled workers are migrating outward because there just aren't good local jobs. This funnels all that top talent into highly concentrated urban centers, creating vicious bottlenecks. You now have this hyper-competitive pool of candidates fighting tooth and nail over that flatline number of entry-level knowledge jobs in the city. And because of this extreme bottleneck, desperate candidates are resorting to wild new extremes just to get noticed. According to Weber Shandwick's 2026 Cultural Trends, welcome to the era of wisdom flexing. Since there's information overload everywhere, standing out means performatively demonstrating this deep intellectual depth. Suddenly, everyone needs a Substack, books are treated like designer handbags, and nerding out is literally a survival tactic. It's an exhausting cultural trend, but it's born directly out of a static, hyper-competitive job market. All right, Section 3, the $1.8 trillion anchor. We need to talk about the true cost of the American dream. All of this brings us right back to the crushing financial toll on the individual. We've talked about that student loan anchor, but what happens when the education you paid for no longer guarantees a working wage that even meets the cost of living? Here's a massive reality check. Recent data from the Queen Zone shows the median U.S. home now costs over $400,000. To afford that, you need a typical household income of about $111,000. But the actual median U.S. household income? It's stuck in the mid-80,000 range. That massive gap right there between aspiration and reality is exactly why the American dream feels like a total mirage in 2026. The fallout from this financial squeeze is profound. With entry-level wages flatlining and costs skyrocketing, young adults literally cannot afford the basic milestones of adulthood. They can't buy cars, they're delaying starting families, and they're struggling to meaningfully participate in the broader economy. The diploma used to be a sail. Now, it's basically an anchor keeping people stuck in place for years. Moving on to Section 4, the meritocracy myth, zip codes over talent. This brings us to a really harsh realization that pretty much dismantles that boomer-era belief in sheer hard work and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. The truth is, the ladder of opportunity has missing rungs now. That traditional 40-hour work week, replaced by an exhausting, always-on gig culture that drains workers physically and mentally. Today, entry-level success is increasingly dictated by your zip code and your family's bank account. Talent has to share the stage with timing, luck, and crucially, the financial safety net required to take an unpaid internship just to pry your foot into that locked door. Okay, Section 5. Redesigning the social contract, and specifically the Dropbox model. We aren't just here to admire the problem, right? How do we actually fix this broken system? Well, the Milken Institute brilliantly points this out in their essays on renewing social contracts. To revitalize the American dream, institutions absolutely must forge a new relationship with society. We desperately need an economy that prevents corporate exploitation and actually prioritizes integrating human beings into the workforce. Outdated legacy models that prioritize profit over people, they have to be redesigned for 21st century markets. Full stop. So what does that redesign look like in the real world? Well, look at the contrast here. The old, failing strategy is to freeze graduate hiring, blame AI, and shrink the pipeline. But then you have what the WEF report calls the Dropbox model. Instead of shrinking, Dropbox completely redesigned their entry-level roles. They actively sought out AI-literate graduates, they integrated AI right into their internships, and they successfully grew their intake by 25%. And the results of this approach are absolutely stunning. By adapting the role instead of just eliminating it, Dropbox found that their graduate hires outperformed externally hired peers across the board. Check this out. By year 2, 65% of this cohort was promoted. And by year 3, an incredible 87% had been promoted. They didn't replace the worker, they just gave the worker better tools. So the absolutely crucial takeaway from this entire explainer is this. AI isn't killing the first job. Employers are simply hesitating to redesign what that first job looks like. The companies that continue to invest in their entry-level workforce are the ones building the strongest organizations for the next decade. The ones who freeze hiring, they're going to wake up in a few years and realize they have literally no one left to promote. Which leaves us with this final thought. The modern job market is going through a really painful negotiation right now. The door has been shut, but it's not going to stay locked forever. As organizations finally start to adapt and redesign their roles, you really have to ask yourself, when that door finally reopens, will you be stepping into a forward-thinking career, or are you just feeding yourself into a broken legacy system? Demand better from the market because your experience shouldn't have to be.
Why settle for shallow facts? Join the intellectual rebellion. Subscribe to WhyLens now.